here and you should have already been gone, or you were never supposed to be in this country to begin with, you're merely undocumented.
I see.
Now, one of the things they were talking about there in that interview, the White House cannot seem to understand why everyday Americans might be a little bit concerned with the amount of air travel that we allow to come from places like West Africa and Liberia in particular.
Can't imagine why. I mean, people get awful touchy for no reason, apparently, if they start bleeding out of their eyes and their nose and their ears and everything else.
The threat of Ebola, according to the White House, is so minimal. It's about like you've got you run the same risk getting Ebola as you would, being in a terror attack in this country, which according to Joe Biden, you're twice as likely to be struck by lightning. Now, to a fellow like me, Joe, those ain't comforting words.
Yeah, Marty's been struck by lightning a few times. Like, literally.
Yeah, see, that doesn't help. His comforting words don't help people like me. And they can't understand why American citizens have a hard time with it when they say, wait, people, look, between us and the CDC, we got this, man. In the meantime, we're hearing on the news where there's been another case pop up or someone has been hospitalized for exhibiting the symptoms. Not to mention there's this strange, crazy enterovirus, a respiratory thing that's paralyzing kids and killing them. And killing kids and old folks.
Like there was one kid that died of that enterovirus. The only symptom he had was a little bit of pink eye.
Yeah.
Poor little feller, man.
And we're not supposed to question that we didn't have this virus in this country until we had that, what did Chuck Todd call it? The surge
of immigrants.
Of undocumented persons with diseases unknown being shipped all over the country. Ironically enough, that enterovirus cuts up a swath from about the middle of the state of California all the way across the middle of the United States, all the way up the East Coast.
No, it's coincidence. Coincidence. You think that?
I read a report.
Racist now.
I read a report this week that said there are undocumented persons in every state in the United States that were a part of the surge over the summer. That means that enough of them came across our border over the summer that the United States has rounded them all up into these nice, neat little camp groups and shipped them to every state in the Union. Now, some of those kids, according to the Border Patrol agents, got very cursory physical examinations. And a lot of them were, just pushed right on through, and they were sick as a dog.
Now, when you say cursory, you don't mean that people swore at them.
No, I mean they looked at him and said, yep, you're a person. Yep, you're still breathing. Okay, next. Yeah, that's about the extent of their physical examinations.
But hey,
don't question
y'all
that.
Worried?
Don't question that. Because
why would you distrust your government over some little silly thing like that?
The government is here to protect you. They're here to save you. Your government has your best interests at heart. And after all, you guys must believe that because 51% of you voted for this very thing.
Yeah.
7 million registered Republicans
just decided not to vote.
Approved of all these things happening. They approved of the VA scandal because they didn't show up to vote. That means that, their silence equals consent because they obviously thought that Barack Obama would have been a better choice than Ron Paul. Since Ron Paul dropped out, they figured Barack Obama we would be better off with 4 more years of him than we would have 4 new years under new leadership like Mitt Romney.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, y'all.
See, it's not just the enterovirus thing. But see, there's another group of people. They call themselves the Islamic State. They've sort of sworn to kill us and govern us all with Sharia law. And they used to operate a lot with suicide bombers. And now on social media, there's this huge trend where they're saying, no, don't blow yourself up. Just go down to Africa. Breathe a little bit. And then go shopping in the United States somewhere. Don't worry about it. Nobody's going to question you. Just call a racist. Being politically correct has now become a national security interest. The fear of calling something what it is for fear of being labeled a racist has now become a threat to our national security. Now that sounds...
Now you're just being racist just by saying stuff
I know,
like
that
man.
sounds a little extreme.
Didn't you say that you had some audio from a very famous person?
Well,
that you have to apologize for the...
Stop calling them famous.
Well, I tell you what. Let's go ahead and tell people there's some language in this video.
This is... The language may be... it's a lot harsh, okay? And I'm not going to play the whole thing. But I want you to listen to an exchange that took place between Bill Maher and Ben Affleck about Islam.
Rashid Rahman for defending people accused of apostasy.
Or how about the more than 1 billion people who aren't fanatical, who don't punish women, who just want to go to the store?
Wait a second. Wait a second.
Don't do any of the things that you're saying. All Muslims.
Wait.
Stereotyping.
I'm not saying all Muslims.
Things, and you're painting the whole group religion with that.
No. Let's get down to who has the right answer here. 1 billion people, you say. All these billion people don't hold any of these...
5 or something.
Don't hold these pernicious beliefs?
No.
I would...
Well, they don't.
That's just not true, Ben. That's just not true.
Can I just express how I think it breaks down in terms of
the idea...
You haven't even defined...
You're trying to say that these few people, that's all the problem is, these few bad apples. The idea that someone should be killed if they leave the Islamic...
That's horrible. That should...
Wait, you're saying that the idea that someone should be killed if they leave the Islamic religion is just a few bad apples?
The people who would actually believe and enact that you murder somebody if they leave Islam is not the majority of Muslims at all.
Okay, let me break this down for you. We have, as you say, we have 1.5, 1.6 billion Muslims. Now,
second biggest religion in the world, a quarter.
Well, Ben, let me unpack this. Let me unpack this for you.
Please do.
We have just imagine some concentric circles here. You have at the center, you have jihadists. These are people who wake up in the morning wanting to kill apostates, wanting to die trying. They believe in paradise. They believe in martyrdom. Outside of them, we have Islamists. These are people who are just as convinced of martyrdom and paradise and wanting to foist their religion on the rest of humanity, but they want to work within the system. They're not going to blow themselves up on a bus. They want to change governments. They want to use democracy against itself. Those two circles arguably are 20% of the Muslim world. Okay, this is not the fringe of the fringe.
What are you basing that research on?
A bunch of poll results that we can talk about. So to give you one point of contact, 78% of British Muslims think that the Danish cartoonist should have been prosecuted. 78%. So I'm being conservative when I roll this back to 20%. But outside of that circle, you have conservative Muslims who can honestly look at ISIS and say that does not represent us, that we're horrified by that, but they hold views about human rights and about women, about homosexuals that are deeply troubling. So these are not Islamists, they're not jihadists, but they both...
Those views are anathema to ours.
But they also keep women and homosexuals immiserated in these cultures, and we have to empower the true reformers in the Muslim world to change it. And lying about the link between doctrine and behavior is not going to do that.
The Great Divide... the great divide is not between Islam and the rest. It's rather between the fundamentalists and the moderates in each faith.
Okay, but we're misled to think that the fundamentalists are the fringe. Okay, we have jihadists, Islamists, and conservatives.
Well, and by the way,
there are hundreds of millions of people fit that description.
You're saying that the strongest voices are coming from those who are jihadists and extremists, and that represents a bigger piece of the pie than we often think is true.
There's no question.
Okay, so having said that, and even if that is true statistically or otherwise, the key thing to recognize that I don't think is part of the argument, but I think should be, is that there are voices that are oftentimes raised in opposition to these jihadists and to these extreme acts. But guess what? They don't get covered. They don't get exposed. And they're not given the same level of platform that we see the jihadists.
One reason they don't get exposed is because they're afraid to speak out. Because it's the only religion that acts like the mafia, that will fucking kill you if you say the wrong thing, draw the wrong picture, or write the wrong book.
So you do have.
You do have.
All right. I rarely agree with Bill Maher, but the past few weeks he's been calling Islam like it is. And Ben Affleck just got entirely too butthurt about, Maher saying it like it is, that as religions go, it is pretty close to being like the mafia.
Well, you didn't cover it in that clip, but at the beginning of that clip, he says that that's racist for Bill Maher to say that.
Yeah. Okay,
first off, Ben, Islam is not a race. It's a religion.
It's a religion.
Okay. So he's just flat out wrong there. And all the numbers that other guy was quoting, man, they were those are very, very conservative numbers because it's one of the tenets of Islam. And they pretty much all sign on to it that if you are born a Muslim or you convert to Islam, and then you say, I'm not into that, I think I'll go and be a Christian or be a Buddhist, you got to die.
Well, Maher quotes a study that they polled, Egypt. And 90% of all Egyptians polled agreed with death for those that leave Islam. That's not 90% of all radical Islamists. That's not 90% of all just Muslims. And that's everybody. That's Egypt. That's 90% of those polled in Egypt. Now, Bill Maher goes on to say that is the equivalent of everyone within the 90% of the people in the country of Brazil saying they're against Catholicism, that they're walking away from Catholicism. It's that radical a thought. But there, it's the norm. There's another study that says, he had listed 78% of the British Muslims. Well, another study was closer to like 87% of all of the British Muslims agree with death for leaving the faith. Those are British Muslims, British citizens.
Yeah.
Now, there's an interview with our FBI director, our current FBI director, talking about people in this country that have wanted to go and join the jihadis and then come back to this country to do it harm. And he says, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know about those people. That is a very scary statement to be coming from the head of the FBI. But that is situation normal for the Obama administration.
So why don't you trust the government, Marty? Racist?
Yeah. I'm beginning to think that a must-be a racist.